Hey there, everybody. It's me, Tom, Moto-Resto, Braden, Florida. And we're back on the Valkyrie. This will be part 2 of the video. And so, as I explained toward the end of the last video, we're going to do right now, at least in the first parts of this video, part 2, deal with removing the fuel tank, and we're going to start prepping it for treatment. So let's get right to it. I'm not going to go through a step-by-step of how to do this. If you have one of these, look at your service manual and just follow that. But generally speaking, of course, we got to take the seat off and then, take whatever hardware is holding the tank down. Sometimes there'll be a fastener up front like that. Sometimes there won't be, and there'll be a couple of rubber, whatever, I don't know what they want to call them. Kawasaki, Honda, whatever, they may call them dampers, but they actually slip into a feature on the tank which has a place for them, and that's how the front of the tank's held down, but not this one. It's got that 8mm head bolt up there, probably 2 back here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get it off first, and then we'll take a look at it together. This is where we're at underneath all that stuff. I got the tank off. It's pretty simple. Again, bolt, disconnect the hoses, disconnect the drain or whatever it is, and it's out of here. Okay, no big deal. Take off the actual gizmo, the fuel cock, get it out of your way. And then, of course, the seat came off first. So the seat on this one is actually latched. I had forgotten about this till I just saw it. There's a little key lock up here which activates a latch that latches or releases the front of the seat. So that's how you do that. I normally have a better setup for this, but unfortunately my table that I use for it, my hydraulic table, where I can roll it around in and out, is in use right now, and I can't remove what's on it. So I'm going to just have it outside here. I do this outside anyway, but anyway, next step here is we want to lose the fuel cock out of it and take a look at that and see what it looks like. There is some fluid in here, whatever. I don't know, it probably was gas at one time. What it is now, I don't know. This has got just a nut on it. It's more of almost like a fitting would be. It is a fitting, but a typical fitting you'd see on a line, a copper line or something, like a compression fitting. Adjustable wrench works just fine. There's an O-ring or some sort of seal. We're going to have to replace that, no question. Just back it out as the nut comes out. Okay. Aha. Alright. Yeah. Let me dispose of any fluid appropriately. Any crap that's in there in my bad gas. Alright, so with the tank upside down, of course on a towel, I got, this, here's your fuel tap or fuel cock. And it's shot. It's completely shot. You can tell by the front of it here because it's got rivets that it's non-serviceable. So this thing is just completely no good. So you can see that right there. It's no good. There's supposed to be a filter condom that goes over this and sits down inside of here. The remnants of it are this. Whatever was in there is either in there now because I had to chip a bunch of it out. We should be able to flush that out with water. But, out the actual fuel inlet, hopefully. But, yeah, this is by far the worst tank I've ever tried to service. But all is not lost yet. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this exit bung here, this particular tap part of it on the inside with a wire thing on a drill because we're going to need to do that anyway. And might as well just do it now and then start flushing it and see what we get. Alright, so that's cleaned out as good as it's going to get, the outside too. And so you have to find a cap to cap this off with something that's not too tight, but something that will seal it up pretty good at least. And this is actually a cap that comes in the kit that I'm about to use on the carburetors. This is from a previous kit, but these are actually to put into the intake, what do you call it, the intake ports on the cylinder head when you take off those little manifolds for each carburetor to keep shit from dropping in. So you drop them in this way. Well, it just so happens that when you put them on this way, that fits pretty damn good. So that'll be fine. Now I want to put some gas in it, and if this expands or starts to eat it away, I have a couple more, so we'll just keep changing them out. But I'm going to put a little gasoline in it, some older 2-cycle stuff that I had mixed up. slosh it around, put it in the bad gas, and try to get as much of the varnish and crap out before we start flushing it with purple power and then water. I also took off the gas cap and that trim bezel. That's all held down with the same 2 screws that holds the hinge part of the gas cap. It's not too terribly bad after a couple washes. I thought that'd be a lot worse. So if it's like this throughout the majority of the tank, I think we'll have no problem saving it. So I've done 2 washes, as I said, and rinses, purple power and water. And if there's any left in there, it doesn't matter. It's not going to react with the acid. Now I'm going to use phosphoric acid very carefully. As you can see, I have it draped, and I use a wire tie to seal up the bung. You know, it's the best we can do, and nothing else is really going to work when it's that bad. And I figure that down in the bottoms of this tank, maybe by the seams, it probably is that bad, but you know, I can't really tell. So the only way to know is to put the acid in it, let it go for a few hours, drain it out back into the same container because we can reuse it basically, and then see from there. Eye protection, you know, appropriate PPE, gloves and so forth. So let's get started. Cha-cha-cha! I left out a step, I'm sorry. You definitely want to level this tank as much as possible, and I mean level to the bung here. And I just checked it at a little level. It's actually almost dead nuts. So basically, the reason why is I want to fill it up almost to the top so I can get those areas in the filler neck there, or the bung, whatever you want to call it, bung hole. And so I did forget that before. So this is secured. It's just fine. It's not going to go anywhere. So I got some in it, and we'll go ahead and finish it up. Okay, when I say all the way to the top, don't do that. I mean, you can get it close, but what's going to happen is, especially if you're outside like this, when the sun hits it, you're going to get some expansion. And plus, when this starts working, a chemical reaction, it's going to expand internally because it's generating some, you know, I guess bubbles, you know, with the chemical reaction. And so essentially, it's going to come up. So leave it a little bit low because it's going to come up, and then you can always add to it later. Now, the mix is, your optimum mix in something that isn't too terribly bad is about 50-50. I bought 1 brand new gallon. This stuff is 27 bucks a gallon, so I wasn't about to buy 2 because I had 2 gallons of diluted, but it didn't seem to be too diluted. In other words, I used it on another project like this, and I likewise added water to it in that particular tank or tanks that I used it on. And the same thing is with this one. I put whatever I could put in as far as product, and then finished it off with water to bring it up there. So I would say it's about a 30 or 40% mixture at this point, which, you know, we're going to have to try it and see what happens, but it may take 2 applications of it, but we'll let it sit for a few hours and then see what happens, because if it isn't that terrible, it will clean it up pretty quick, but if it is, then we're going to have to do it again. All right, well, while our soup is cooking, let's take a look at the service data and see what is required to get these carbs out. I want to follow the service procedure, and you know, like I said, I can't really remember it, but naturally we had to get the airbox and stuff out. And see that it's a K&N 20,915, and it's got 21,345 as it sits, so that's probably going to be just fine. May need a little bit of wiping down and a little bit of oil maybe, but we'll see. Airbox is out, and here it is. And that's a pain because these things have to essentially get squeezed between the frame. There's just no other way to do it. The service manual is basically worthless when it comes to this particular component. It says, you know, once you remove the fasteners and the 2 hoses that are on the bottom of it, then, you know, it should just come right out. But of course, you got to force it. I remember that from doing the last one. So I'll come up with some way to maybe reseal some of the joints where this thing goes together. You see, this is the original Honda, you know, snot that they put on this when they put this thing in. It never lasts, so I'll come up with something for it. All right, so the next steps were the choke cable, the throttle cables on the other side. I had to remove this upper engine mount. There's plenty of engine mounts, not going to fall out. There's only one on the left side here. There's not one on the right. The coil for the right bank, I believe it is, or I'm not sure. You know what? I don't even know what coil this thing fires. I'm just leaving everything hooked up. And we'll label these when, or if they're already labeled, doesn't matter. Yeah, 6, 4, 2. So we'll just make sure we remember that and put them back in, of course. But, because I'm going to probably pull the plugs and check those. But anyway, don't have to take them out now. What we need to do now is we need to loosen the band clamps according to the service data on both sides. Then we take the intake manifolds off of the actual carb holders, and then we move on from there. So I'll get that done on both sides. Just got to be careful with these, make sure none of them snap. That would suck, but I don't think it will. This thing hadn't been sitting out in the weather, so it should be okay. Of course, when we put it back together, these will all be torqued to torque spec, and they'll have new O-rings, which I do have. I purchased them. Also in that kit, which I'll dig out right now, is the caps, the one I showed you that I put on the bottom of that tank. From the other job that I did, I'll take the 6 of those out, because when we pull one off, we put a cap in and make sure nothing falls down inside the engine into the intake side. Okay, here we go. Carbs are all laid out in a nice purple towel. My wife gets these from, I think, Goodwill. They're a couple bucks a piece, and use them for a while. You can scrap them. I never wash them in the washing machine. It'll screw it up. But anyway, we're not here to talk about towels. We're here to talk about carbs. But we're not going to do that either, because this video is almost over, and we'll deal with these in a separate video. Here's where they used to live. And again, if I go over anything that's of interest in here, besides, the fact that we're going to probably have to replace, I'm sure we're going to have to replace all these vacuum lines, then I'll do it at that time in a separate video as well. Okay, so this is our end result after just one. I think we got it. If it's that good up here, I'm sure it's that good down below. Now, I'm running out of time today. I really got to stop very soon. It needs to be flushed a few more times with water to make sure, because I see a few more little pieces of rust coming out, which are just floating around. But I'm going to have to kind of cure this or secure it for the night, and I'll show you how I do that to make sure it doesn't flash rust. I just put one of Mama's old hair dryers on with this is a rubber hose off an old Super Turbo for the air filter or something, I don't know. And I use it for this, and it fits most of these bigger bungs perfectly. Put a wire tie on it. Now, I know what they say about heat sources and spark and blowing shit up, but I'm guaranteeing you there wasn't any gas left in there. Any viable fuel evaporated a long time ago. I've never had a problem doing this, and it's been flushed numerous times. There's nothing combustible in there. So what it's doing is simply blowing out through the fuel bung, or the fuel cock bung, where that fuel petcock screws into. Let this go for a little while, and then we're going to finish this up. How I do this, because now it's pretty dry, and it doesn't have to be perfectly dry, is I have a air chuck, with a long wand, and what I end up doing is I use WD-40 with the wand at the same exact time right through the bung, and essentially fog the inside of the tank like this. She looks like that when she's done, and I put a lot in there. You don't have to be, conservative with this at all. Just put a shitload of WD-40 in there, blow it around. You saw the fog was coming out, so you can be reasonably sure that the entire inside surface of that tank has at least some WD-40 on it, and that'll keep it from flash rusting. Okay, that's it. We got the tank done, as you saw, and the carbs pulled from the bike. That's all we have time for in this video, and that's all I have time for right now. In fact, I'm actually a little bit behind on where I normally would be right now. I'm going to get some domestic stuff done before the wife gets home from work. So the next video, we're going to deal with the carburetors. Probably the entire video will be that. Maybe, I don't know. And we'll take a look at those and decide whether or not we have to unrack them. I think they will have to be unracked, that is. Or not, or see how bad they are or good they are, So this tank cleaned up a lot better than I thought. I'm probably going to rinse this one or more times further, but I'm going to take a little bit of closer look at inspection with a flashlight and see what I can see through even the bottom, the bung on the bottom for where the pet cock goes, and we'll figure out at that point whether or not it needs to be flushed a whole lot more. When you do this with WD-40, what I do is, at least before it goes on the bike for final assembly, I do run about, I don't know, half, 3/4 gallon of gas through, usually 2-stroke gas, out of those cans, and then drain that into the bad gas container, and there's a little oil in there. It's not going to be a problem. It also keeps it from flash rusting, and something sitting this long, it wouldn't be a bad idea to run it on that anyway, once it first starts up. We'll cover all that in another video because I haven't cranked it yet, We'll probably end up doing a compression test, things like that. So until next time, I want to say thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.